This podcast is brought to you courtesy TrumpetHouse Publishing. Welcome to episode 2, When Books Become Dangerous. So I want you to picture this. It's the dead of night in a desert city.
Okay, setting the scene.
Yeah, and the streets are being patrolled by these armed militants, right?
Yeah.
And they've made it very, very clear that anyone caught, preserving the old ways is going to face severe punishment.
Like life or death stakes.
Exactly. And inside this dusty, sweltering building, you have this group of local librarians and just ordinary citizens. And they are frantically stuffing thousands of these fragile, centuries-old, handwritten manuscripts into metal footlockers.
Just trying to hide them.
Right. They are risking their lives to smuggle these boxes out of the city. We're talking to the trunks of cars on the backs of donkeys. And the crazy thing is, they aren't smuggling weapons.
Right.
They aren't smuggling gold or money. They're literally smuggling paper.
It sounds like a scene from a dystopian thriller or something.
It really does.
But that was actually the reality in Timbuktu, Mali, just over a decade ago.
Yeah, in 2012.
Right, and I think it perfectly encapsulates this strange kind of enduring phenomenon that we're looking at today in our sources.
Which is exactly the mission for our deep dive today.
Yeah.
Because we're looking at a question that, on the surface it sounds a little absurd.
Yeah, it does.
How could paper and ink and words possibly terrify these vast empires and ruthless dictators and entrenched religious authorities?
Right, it's just paper.
Exactly. And more importantly, what does that historical reality mean for the stories and the truths that you, the listener, haven't even written yet?
Because, when you look at a book just sitting on a shelf, it looks completely harmless,
Just a block of paper.
Yeah, it's just glue, some thread, a cover, pages. But the sources we're diving into make this incredibly compelling argument that leaders throughout history, they never saw an object.
What did they see?
They saw an active existential threat.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really get what our sources are saying today, you have to completely shift how you view the actual act of reading.
Right, you have to reframe it.
Yeah, I want you to stop looking at a book as bound paper. Think of it more like a compressed file of pure influence.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right. Like the moment you open it and read it, that file basically downloads directly into a civilization's operating system.
That analogy hits the nail on the head, honestly. The core thesis across all our sources is that books aren't static. They are dynamic ideas that are actively competing for dominance.
Because they make you think.
Exactly. Every single page asks a reader to think critically. Every chapter invites a question about the status quo.
Which is dangerous if you're in charge.
Highly dangerous. Historically speaking, writers shape the culture, and then the culture shapes the politics.
Right. So it's like the philosopher writes it, a generation absorbs it, and then decades later, the government finally reflects it.
Yes.
The written word basically paves the road that the laws eventually drive on.
Which perfectly explains why those in power have spent, just unbelievable amounts of resources trying to control that road.
I'm trying to put up roadblocks.
Exactly. And that brings us to the first major theme in the sources, which is this historical battle for memory. Like, who actually gets to decide what happened?
Because it's rarely just about controlling physical land, is it?
No, not at all.
It's about who gets to tell the story of the people living on that land.
And we see this going all the way back to ancient antiquity. Kings and emperors would commission these grand official histories.
Right, the approved version of events.
Exactly. And surprise, surprise, these accounts did absolutely nothing but praise their military genius and their divine right to rule.
Shocker.
Right. They systematically erased their failures, any military blunders they made, and most importantly, they erased the voices of ordinary people.
So if you're like a historian looking back 1,000 years later, and only that one official state-sanctioned version of history survived.
You're not getting the whole picture.
Right. You inherit a completely fractured truth. It's essentially ancient propaganda disguised as objective memory.
Exactly. And institutions didn't just want to promote their own propaganda. They realized they needed to actively suppress any narrative that contradicted it.
Which takes a lot of effort.
A massive amount of effort. And the Roman Catholic Church is actually one of the most famous examples of this in the sources.
Right, the index they had.
Yeah, for centuries they maintained the Index Librorum Prohibitorum, which is the index of forbidden books.
I saw that in the notes, and I have to ask about the actual mechanics of this.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Because how did a religious institution actually enforce a book ban across entire continents for centuries?
Yeah.
This is long before the internet or modern surveillance.
Right, no digital tracking.
Did they just have inspectors knocking on people's doors?
Well, it was a really vast, layered system. For one, they controlled the universities.
Huh?
So if a book was on the index, it just simply couldn't be taught. Period.
That cuts off the scholars.
Exactly. And
Mm.
they also leaned really heavily on printers and booksellers. They would threaten them with excommunication or total financial ruin if they printed or sold these texts.
Wow, so going right to the supply chain.
Going right to the source. And the index didn't just target, scandalous fiction or something.
What else was on it?
It went after groundbreaking scientists, people like Galileo and Copernicus, prominent philosophers, political thinkers.
Because they challenged the worldview.
Right. The church understood that science and philosophy introduce entirely new paradigms. If you start questioning, say, the center of the solar system.
Right. Then you might start questioning the moral authority of the church itself.
Exactly. It's a slippery slope for them.
But wait, doesn't human psychology kind of naturally push back against that?
What do you mean?
Like, if someone tells me I am absolutely categorically forbidden from reading a specific political philosophy.
It becomes the only thing you want to read.
Yes. That philosophy suddenly becomes incredibly fascinating. It's like the ultimate free marketing campaign.
Oh, it absolutely acts as an engine for curiosity, at least for a certain type of person. Prohibition often backfires because it gives the forbidden item this massive cultural mystique.
So here's where it gets really interesting to me. If banning a book just acts as free marketing, why did these massive, powerful institutions keep trying to do it for over 400 years?
It's a good question.
Were they just, like, blindly underestimating human rebellion?
Not blindly, no. They were basically playing a numbers game to maintain a monopoly on authority.
Okay, how so?
Well, yes, banning a book made a few really determined rebels want to read it more. But the institutional goal was to control the broader ecosystem of knowledge for the average person.
Make it hard for the everyday guy to get it.
Exactly. If a book can't be taught in a university, if it can't be openly debated in the public square, and if it can't be sold in your local market, the friction to acquire it becomes incredibly high.
You have to really want it.
Right. Most people simply won't go through the danger and the sheer expense to find it.
That makes sense.
The institutions were trying to build a dam. They knew some water was always going to leak through, but they were trying to prevent a total flood.
Okay, so if the dam starts leaking, if you can't stop the ideas from spreading from person to person, you kind of have to escalate your tactics, right?
Yeah, you go to the next level.
If you can't kill the idea, you target the physical hard drive where all the ideas are stored.
The libraries.
Which brings us to some of the most heartbreaking historical events we cover in this deep dive.
Yeah.
The physical destruction of centralized knowledge.
Yeah, this part is tough. We really have to look at 9th century Baghdad here.
Yeah.
At the time, it was home to one of the greatest intellectual centers ever created in human history. It was called the House of Wisdom.
Just the name alone, the House of Wisdom, it sounds like a myth.
It really does.
But this was a very real, incredibly vital institution.
It was an absolute marvel of the ancient world. You had all these scholars gathering there under one roof, and their primary mission was translation and synthesis.
Just gathering everything they could find.
Yeah, they were taking Greek, Persian, Indian, and Syriac texts and translating all of them into a shared Arabic lexicon.
Wow.
We are talking about laying the foundational groundwork for modern algebra, astronomy, medicine, engineering.
So they weren't trying to keep outside ideas out.
No, they didn't fear foreign knowledge at all. They actively hunted for it and preserved it.
I read in the sources that a lot of classical Greek works only survive today because they passed through the House of Wisdom.
That's true.
They were preserved in Arabic before eventually making their way back to Europe centuries later.
Yeah, the preservation effort was monumental.
But centralizing all that brilliance in one physical location, that turned out to be its fatal flaw, didn't it?
It did. Because in 1258, the Mongols laid siege to Baghdad, and when the city finally fell, the House of Wisdom was just utterly devastated.
Completely wiped out.
The historical accounts from that time are chilling. They describe these vast, irreplaceable libraries just being thrown into the Tigris River.
Just dumped in the water?
Yeah, the legend is that the river actually ran black with the ink of countless manuscripts and red with the blood of the scholars.
That is such a vivid, horrifying image.
Yeah.
But why did the Mongols go out of their way to destroy a library, though?
What do you think their goal was?
Well, weren't they primarily interested in territory and wealth? Like, why bother with the books?
Because conquering a city is just physical, right? But conquering a civilization is psychological.
Ah, I see.
To truly subjugate a people, you have to erase their history. You erase their intellectual foundation and their cultural pride.
You take away their identity.
Exactly. The loss of the House of Wisdom wasn't just some local tragedy. Historians widely agree it set back global scientific progress for centuries.
That's staggering.
It proves that a civilization isn't just weakened when its walls fall. It is fundamentally broken when its collective memory disappears.
Which brings us right back to that nighttime smuggling operation I brought up at the start of the show.
In Mali.
Right. Fast forward from the Mongols in 1258 all the way to the 21st century in Timbuktu, Mali.
Timbuktu was this ancient, thriving center of African scholarship.
Yeah.
Families there had actually passed down hundreds of thousands of handwritten manuscripts for generations, like in their own homes.
And it wasn't just religious texts, which is what I originally assumed when I started reading the sources.
No, it was way broader than that.
The sources detailed texts on astronomy, mathematics, medicine, human rights law, poetry, commerce, even complex diplomacy.
It was a testament to this incredibly rich, diverse intellectual history. But when modern armed conflict erupted in 2012, extremist groups took over the city.
They went right for the history.
Yeah, they began destroying any cultural artifacts they deemed inappropriate or heretical.
So local librarians working alongside ordinary citizens orchestrated this massive, covert rescue mission.
So brave.
Imagine being one of those librarians. You're literally sneaking past armed checkpoints with metal trunks full of dusty, decaying paper.
Knowing the consequences.
Right, if they open your trunk, you could be executed on the spot. It's like someone is trying to delete the world's collective hard drive, and you are sneaking out the server backups under the cover of darkness.
And they did it because they completely understood the stakes. They weren't just saving old paper, you know?
They were saving who they were.
Exactly. They were rescuing the soul of their civilization. They knew that if those physical books were burned, the proof of their rich history would just vanish.
And then the extremists would win the psychological war.
Right. The extremists would get to completely rewrite the narrative of who the people of Mali actually were.
So, if we look at this pattern, centralizing knowledge in a physical building, whether it's the Grand House of Wisdom or a network of libraries in Timbuktu, it makes it incredibly vulnerable.
Highly vulnerable.
A single fire, a single invading army, and literal centuries of thought are just gone.
Gone overnight.
So the ultimate defense mechanism against that kind of destruction had to be decentralization.
And that brings us to a massive technological pivot in the 15th century. Johannes Gutenberg and the movable type printing press. Because before Gutenberg, a book was this extreme luxury item.
It took forever to make one.
Monks or scribes had to painstakingly copy every single word by hand.
Which meant knowledge effectively belonged exclusively to kings, the church, or just exceptionally wealthy elites.
But the printing press shattered that monopoly completely. The mechanism of movable type meant you didn't have to carve a whole page into a solid woodblock anymore.
You could just swap the letters.
Right. You could rearrange individual metal letters, print hundreds of copies, and then just rearrange them for the next page.
So the cost of a book plummeted.
Exactly.
So suddenly, ordinary people could actually afford to access complex ideas. And destroying a book became practically impossible at that point.
It changed the math entirely.
Because an authority figure could burn one copy in the town square, right? But 1,000 more were already circulating in the taverns and the universities.
You couldn't catch them all.
Ideas began spreading faster than armies could march.
We see literacy rates start to rise, scientific discoveries begin to circulate across borders, and just a profound shift in how society operates.
The printing press allowed specific books to not just, add to a conversation, but to completely dismantle and rebuild entire disciplines.
We have some incredible examples of this in the sources, actually. Books that didn't just inform people, they genuinely changed how the world functioned.
Right, like Adam Smith.
Take Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations in 1776. Before Smith, the way nations understood wealth was largely based on hoarding gold and maintaining strict trade monopolies.
Mercantilism, yeah.
But Smith introduced the concept of free markets and the invisible hand, which completely rewired global economics.
It's crazy how one guy's writing did that.
Or look at Mary Wollstonecraft's A Vindication of the Rights of Woman in 1792. She systematically dismantled the idea that women were naturally inferior to men.
Which was a very radical thought at the time.
Very radical. She argued that society was literally hobbling itself by denying education to half its population.
And then, moving into the 20th century, the sources bring up Rachel Carson's Silent Spring.
Yes, a perfect example.
She didn't just write, a generic opinion piece about nature. She rigorously tracked the chemical paths of pesticides like DDT.
Following the actual science.
Right, and she showed how they were destroying the entire food chain. That single book led to massive changes in environmental policy.
It started a movement.
It led to the eventual ban on DDT and even the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency in the U.S.
The really fascinating thing about authors like Smith, Wollstonecraft, and Carson is that they were planting trees knowing they might never actually get to sit in the shade.
That's a great way to put it.
They introduced these rigorous, evidence-based conversations that echoed far, far beyond their own lifetimes.
But if we connect this historical decentralization to the modern day, we are living in a completely different reality now.
Oh, totally.
The internet, social media, ebooks, these have removed the barrier to entry completely. A laptop is your printing press, and you can reach the entire globe instantly.
Anyone can publish.
So my question is, does that infinite accessibility actually make it harder for a book to be heard in a sea of digital noise?
Well, it creates a new kind of challenge. We've basically transitioned from information scarcity to information overload.
We're drowning in it.
We're drowning in hot takes, tweets, and these 20-second videos. But I think that is precisely why the format of a book remains so vital.
Why is that?
Because the world doesn't desperately need more fleeting opinions,
Yes.
It needs wisdom.
Yeah.
A well-crafted book signals to the reader that the author engaged in disciplined thinking. They did the research, they organized their thoughts, and they committed to a long-form argument rather than just reacting to today's news cycle.
Which brings us to the most surprising and maybe the most introspective twist in our source material today.
This part really stuck with me.
We spent this whole time exploring books that were destroyed by Mongols, banned by popes, and smuggled by brave librarians. But the sources revealed that the greatest library in the world isn't one that burned down.
No, the greatest library in the world is the library of books that were destroyed by their own authors before they were ever written.
The tragedy of the unwritten book.
Exactly.
Our sources spend a lot of time addressing this intense fear that people have of writing down their own personal stories, their unique skills, or their testimonies.
It's so common.
It turns out censorship isn't actually the main reason books disappear. Fear is.
It is a profoundly common, paralyzing fear. It's the fear of criticism, worrying about, what your peers or your family will say.
The judgment.
Right. It's the fear of imperfection, that imposter syndrome whispering that you aren't a real writer.
Who am I to write a book?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And perhaps the most tragic one. The fear that your life is just ordinary and no one will actually care about what you have to say.
We look back at ancient kings erasing ordinary voices to pump up their own egos, and we recognize the tragedy in that historical loss.
We see it clearly then.
But we do the exact same thing to ourselves today. We erase our own voices before anyone else even gets the chance to try.
Think about the staggering volume of human experience that just evaporates every single day.
So much gets lost.
Brilliant small business strategies that are never described on paper. Vital, life-changing advice on how to survive a specific kind of grief, never recorded.
Yeah.
Incredibly rich family histories that vanish completely because a grandparent thought, oh, nobody wants to read about my boring life, and then that memory is just gone forever when they pass away.
History is missing two entirely different categories of books, the ones destroyed by tyrants and the ones surrendered to fear.
And the second category is much larger.
Undoubtedly much, much larger. But let's be real for a second, because I know what aspiring authors are thinking when they hear this.
What's that?
They ask, what if I put in all this work, months or years, and my book isn't a massive commercial success? What if it doesn't hit a bestseller list?
And that is the exact metric that stops people from starting.
Right.
They view publishing solely through the lens of mass commercial viability.
But the sources completely flip that on its head. What if we reframe the entire purpose of writing?
I love this framing.
What if there is someone out there who doesn't need a generic self-help bestseller, but they desperately need your specific, nuanced testimony.
Your exact experience.
Yes, and you let the fear of not selling a million copies convince you to withhold the one thing that could have helped them.
That is the essential paradigm shift. The value of a book isn't just measured by royalties, it is measured by legacy and the ripple effect.
The ripple effect is huge.
Because one single book changes future generations in ways you cannot possibly calculate.
It's the domino effect of wisdom. You write down how you overcame a specific failure, right?
Yeah.
One single page of that book changes the perspective of one reader. That reader takes that newfound resilience and changes the dynamic of their family.
It spreads.
That stronger family goes out and improves their community.
Yeah.
And a resilient community eventually changes a nation.
History is built on those invisible ripples. Someone decides to document what they have learned, whether it's preserving your family's immigration story so your great-grandchildren understand their roots.
Or teaching a highly technical skill you've mastered over 40 years.
Exactly. You have to recognize that your lived experience is a resource.
You will literally never know all the lives your words will touch. But the one absolute mathematical guarantee is that you will never touch any of them if the knowledge remains locked inside your head.
100%.
The ultimate call to action from our sources today is crystal clear. The greatest danger in the world isn't a dangerous book. The greatest danger is allowing truth, experience, and hope to remain unwritten.
You just have to begin. Every lasting legacy, every cultural shift, and every preserved memory starts the exact same way.
Staring at a blank page.
With someone, somewhere, looking at that blank page and deciding that what they know is worth saving for the future.
Think about the massive digital footprint you leave behind every single day.
It's math.
Thousands of quick texts, scattered emails, and fleeting social media posts. But in 100 years, when your descendants are trying to figure out who you were and what you stood for,
What are they going to find?
exactly, will any of those scattered, out-of-context digital fragments tell your actual truth? Or do you need to intentionally bind your legacy into a singular permanent narrative so no one else gets to rewrite your history? Remember, for book publishing services, contact Trumpet House Publishing at trumpethouse25@gmail.com.